back to another episode of Let's Think Green, an environmental podcast for Gen Z, where we tell you how you can mitigate environmental issues. I'm your host, Ria, and it's great to be back at the mic. Today we'll be talking and thinking about World Environment Day and planting native plants. Stay tuned. Tomorrow, June 5th, is World Environment Day. World Environment Day was started by the United Nations in the 1970s, and it's a day to inspire positive global environmental change and to bring awareness to environmental issues such as crimes against wildlife and rising sea levels and food wastage and melting glaciers. This year, the theme for World Environment Day is ecosystem restoration. Through this theme, the United Nations wants to call to attention the countless ecosystems that human activity has destroyed. But they also want to recognize that we have the tools and ideas and minds to restore these ecosystems, the forests, the wetlands, the coral reefs, the rivers. World Environment Day is also a day to encourage governments and businesses and organizations and individuals like you and me to take action. So in the spirit of World Environment Day, I'm going to tell you how you can take action to strengthen your local ecosystem, the ecosystem in your community, in your backyard, in your front yard, by planting native plants. Native plants are plants that originated in a region and naturally grow there. For example, coneflowers are native to eastern and central North America, and Japanese honeysuckles, one of the most popular flowers in the United States, originated from Eastern Asia. You would think that native plants would dominate the United States landscape, but in most urban and suburban regions, it's the non-native plants, the roses, the hydrangeas, the tulips, the carnations, that are everywhere. The prevalence of non-native and ornamental plants is putting native species in danger. For example, the wild bird population has decreased by 3 million over the past 70 years in North America, according to a study conducted by a number of ornithologists and published by Science. The insect population, although not dying off in countless numbers in North America, is also being threatened by the lack of native plants in local communities. Native plants are vital to the survival of local ecosystems. But why? The answer lies in evolution. If you've ever taken any sort of biology class, then you probably know species in the same region co-evolve. So insects are evolved to eat plants in the same region. Over thousands of years, insects and other species have evolved so that they can eat those specific plants and basically nothing else. Insects and other species can't eat another plant because they're not evolved to do so. In short, native species and birds need native plant species and to survive. Native plants are really important to local ecosystems for another reason. It is because they have natural enemies, so their growth is kept in check. Non-native plants are oftentimes invasive species which don't have any natural enemies and then can take over local ecosystems, starving out local plant life and decreasing biodiversity. According to Joe Allwood, a YouTube and wildlife videographer, native species can support 29 more species than non-native species, and native trees can support up to 500 more species. That's species, not organisms. This can seriously strengthen a local ecosystem and increase the local ecosystem's biodiversity. Now, previously, I've been saying insects a lot, and insects are integral to an ecosystem, and native plants is a great way to boost that insect population. Now, you might be wondering, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to plant native plants which will bring in all these native insects that are always buzzing about and maybe even stinging me? Well, the reason is that insects are primary food source for many birds. Adult birds will oftentimes feed their young only insects. So less insects means less birds, and who doesn't like birds? And then also insects are pollinators. They are the reason why plants have beautiful flowers and why we can delight in crops such as coffee and chocolate and strawberries. So without insects, we wouldn't have 3/4 of our crops. From a gardener perspective, another benefit of planting native plants is that since they match the area's growing conditions, they don't require pesticides and chemicals to survive and only need minimal care. And even if they do get pests, you don't really need to worry about them because the nearby species will eat the pests away. We have a couple of knockout roses in our garage, and Pragya, our editor and producer and also an avid gardener, would spend tons of time pruning and deheading them and cleaning them and putting mulch and planting garlic to get rid of the pests and giving them plant food and fertilizer and reading about what she can do to get rid of the pests and disease. And now it's gotten to the point that she just left them, like let them do their thing because the pests aren't going away. And part of the reason is that they aren't native to this area, so they aren't that used to the soil. So had Pragya just planted a swamp rose or a prairie rose, roses that are native to where we live, she would have spent way less time caring for them and they would have looked equally beautiful. Native plants are integral to the health and survival of local ecosystems. Many of the native species living in the area rely on native plants as a source of food and nutrients. And non-native plants do not give them those food and nutrients. Strengthen the ecosystem around your home by planting native plants. If you're not a gardener, that's okay. As I mentioned earlier, start small. Plant a small native flower in your pot and see how you do. If you have some space in your yard, plant a native shrub or a tree. One point I want to make is that planting native plants does not mean you have to remove non-native plants that are already in your yard. Figuring out which plants are native to your area can be tricky, but there are numerous databases online, such as Native Plant Finder, that you can use to figure out which plants are native to your area. You can also, in Google, search the state plus native plant. So if you live in North Carolina, you could type in North Carolina native plant in Google, and you'll get a nice list. Figuring out which plants are native to your area can be tricky, but there are numerous databases online, such as Native Plant Finder, that you can use to figure out which plants are native to your area. You can also, in Google, search the state plus native plant. So if you live in North Carolina, you could type in North Carolina native plant in Google, and you'll get a nice list. Native plants are serving a much bigger purpose than just looking beautiful. They're providing homes and foods for countless species who we depend on for survival. So that's all about native plants. I hope that I've convinced you to plant native plants because they are really important to our ecosystem. In the spirit of World Environment Day, we have started a challenge. So we challenge all of you to actually go and do something for the environment. Not just listen to our podcast or read a book, but actually go and do something. It can be small, big, it all counts. Plant a native plant. Or if that doesn't seem like your thing, that's okay. Do something else, like walk instead of drive, or reuse plastic bags. Or you can listen to our previous episodes to get more inspiration for call to actions that you can do. Take a picture of you doing this challenge. You can send it to us at thinkgreenpod@gmail.com, or you can post it on Instagram, #World Environment Day, #Let's Think Green, and we'll post it on our Instagram page, and hopefully all of you guys taking pictures and posting will inspire other people to do something good for the environment. So partake in this challenge, because it's really important that we all do something for the environment, because as the World Environment Day emphasizes, we only have one Earth. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast. Leave us a review so people like you can find it and listen. And subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. We also have launched a website. You can access all of our episodes and show notes page and much more at our website, www.letsthinkgreen.wixsite.com/home. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day. Bye.